We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Friday. Been kind of a busy week, couple of disappointments, but I think we can talk about those and maybe explain what's going on, and maybe you'll feel better about them. The bottom line is things are going well for the Democrats, very well in all aspects. Um, for a long time, we had Republicans talking about how bad the economy was, and now that's turned around and it's actually going quite well. I wanted to mention something. There was a guy by the name of Larry Kudlow. He was Donald Trump's financial guy, and he is one of those clowns that kept coming around saying, "Oh, the recession's coming, just you wait." That was hopeful thinking because they wanted Joe Biden to look bad. That's who the Republicans are. They want bad to happen to this country and to the people in this country just so they can own a libtard, so they can own Joe Biden. Well, they kept saying this recession was coming, and I will tell you this, um, not that I know anything about financial futures or anything like that. I said, I don't know how there's a recession coming. Things were going too well. Turns out I was right and the experts were wrong. but don't get me wrong. I don't think I know anything. It was just a gut feeling. Anyway, this Larry Kudlow is one of the guys that suggested there would be a recession. And there was a tweet or an X or whatever the fuck you call it, put out by a guy by the name of Victor Shi. And this is what he tweeted. He said, "Wow, Fox anchor Larry Kudlow, Donald Trump's financial guy, just said on Fox, I was wrong about the slowdown and the recession. Everyone was wrong. This is the truth. There is no recession. There is no slowdown. Our economy is strong and booming because of President Biden. Period. Be loud and proud." That's interesting because mostly they'll fucking lie about it. Donald Trump is going off saying, well, the economy and the stock market's only going well because people know I'm going to win in November. No, Donald, that's not what's going on. The fact is, Joe Biden knows what he's doing. You didn't know fuck all about fuck all, and you crashed the economy because you ignored the pandemic. So this is getting under Donald Trump's skin. He kept saying the market's going to crash and all these bad things were going to happen if Joe Biden was elected president. Of course, he was elected, and nothing but good has come for the economy since Joe Biden's been in office. And it's not even that Joe Biden is necessarily brilliant. He just understands the job. He understands the game. Donald Trump never did, and it was all about enriching himself, and that will always take a shit. Everything Donald Trump has done has taken a shit. So even Donald Trump's own people are giving Joe Biden credit for this economy as well. They should. All right, let's check some emails as we get into this today. By the way, thanks to Old Soul for joining me yesterday. I'm hoping Ed'll be on tomorrow or at some point. But Old Soul, always a great show, and she tells some interesting stories. And want to thank you for taking the time to listen and praising her. You have to understand this woman isn't on social media anyplace else. She's on the podcast, and she makes comments on other people's videos and such. But she has to be one of the more intelligent, articulate people in social media. And then when you consider the fact she's not on any social media except for the Rational Boomer podcast, that's truly fucking amazing. She's getting a little bit of not a little bit, a pretty good sized fan base from just being on the show. If anybody should be in social media, it should be her. She's better than most I've heard. And that's why I like having her on the show, because she makes me look good. The shows are always great when she's on or Ed's on or some of the other listeners are on because they make the show better. And that's why I enjoy having other people on the show with me. That said, this is going to be all me today. I have no guest today, so I'll give it my best shot to live up to the level that we brought it to yesterday with Old Soul. All right. First email. It says, it's obvious to me that the right wing see Taylor Swift as a little girl that they can push around. The media campaign of hate and threats is designed to intimidate her into silence, as well as to boost right-wing media ratings. I doubt it's going to work. No, it's not going to work. Taylor Swift seems like a very sweet young woman. And I'd say girl, but somebody called me out on it earlier today on TikTok. She's not a girl. She's a full grown woman. I'll explain it again. She's the same age as my kids. When I call her a girl, it's a term of endearment. I'm not trying to put her down. Stop trying to find things to fucking start shit with. Anyway, she's a very strong minded woman. She knows what she wants and what she's accomplished in the music business. That wasn't done by a shrinking flower. This is a woman who's got some power and she knows it. The email goes on. The right wing cannot motivate their people with good ideas that help all of America. Their donors won't have it. But more to the point, the right wing voters actually seem to hate the rest of this country. They are the epitome of spite. They would burn down their own house just to own the libs with the smoke. Sad. But you're absolutely right about that. They will cut their nose off to spite their face. Email goes on. Their behavior is right out of George Orwell's novel 1984, The 2 Minutes of Hate. It unifies them, defines them, and it's also highly addictive. They cannot and will not break this addiction. Keep up the good work. Love you and the wonderful people you have on, as well as the commenters. Al. Thank you, Al. I appreciate it. And I couldn't agree with you more. All right, the next one. Good morning, Mike. I'm wondering what the heck is the big deal with the border? Why are so many people focused on that when there are so many other more horrific problems? But most of these Trumplafucks and others persist on focusing on the border. It makes no sense to me. Why this hatred for immigrants? Did they forget that America was founded by immigrants? This country is great because of our immigrants. I wish they all would shut the fuck up and focus on fixing the real problems, dealing with the insurrectionists in Congress, shutting up the orange turd nugget for once and for all, corporate greed, the filthy rich tax evaders, and returning the right to women to make our own decisions. Did you see how the numbers of rapes went up in red states and 65,000 births because of it? Shame on these idiots. Focus on that and leave the immigrants alone, for Pete's sake. I feel better already. Thanks again for being the voice of calm, common sense, and compassion. Deborah from Southern California. Yeah, that's exactly right. We heard the story that Old Soul told us yesterday about a young minor, a young girl, and she was a girl or is a girl, and she was abused by an adult. She got pregnant. She had to leave the state to have an abortion. And when she goes back to the state, she can't even call this guy out for his crimes because she would be looked at as more of a criminal than he would. That is dystopian. That's draconian. That's outrageous. And that shit does have to change. And it will change. As I've said, when we get to the election in November, things are going to change dramatically in the House and the Senate. We're going to see Roe v. Wade codified. That should be the first thing they do. Among other things they need to attend to, there's going to be a lot of digging out of the hole that Republicans have put us in. It's not going to be easy, but it can be done, and we've got to start somewhere. And we are going to start with all of us getting out there and voting and kicking those motherfuckers out. All right, the next email says, hello, Boomer Mike. I look forward to listening to your podcast daily as I sit at my sewing machine making slings for patient care lifts. Wow. I can't help but laugh just thinking of Diaper Don with his ass in a sling, a very heavy duty one at that. The reason I'm writing is that I have been listening to your analyst of Donnie's financial crisis every day. As he gets poorer and poorer by the day, and as he keeps having his lawyers quitting every week, I had a laughable moment today as I imagined him getting to his D.C. trial without a penny in his penny bank and having to plead with the court to appoint a public defender to him. I would guess that no public defense lawyer would want to touch this dirty diaper defendant, since he always wants to direct his lawyers' every action anyway. He may just decide to represent himself and throw himself on the mercy of the court. So thanks for giving me a good laugh every day as well as a daily dose of sanity. The oldest boomer, Gary. Yeah, I don't know how this is all going to shake out. He's gone through a lot of lawyers, and there are a lot of lawyers that just won't deal with him. He's not a good client to have. And I don't know. Will he get a public defender? I can't imagine. The public defenders won't have the pressure to do Donald Trump's bidding because it won't be about money at this point. Donald Trump won't have any money, so he can demand all he wants, but the lawyers are going to do whatever the fuck they think is right at that given time. A lot of people think that he might plead out. I'm going to tell you this: he's not going to get the opportunity to plead out. They're going to run this to trial and take him to task and get the conviction. Donald Trump's not going to find an easy way out of this. Donald Trump, as he said before, is going to be going through some things, and I'll be surprised if he survives mentally, physically, whatever. All right, next email. Thank you, Gary, by the way. It's currently 2:46 a.m. Eastern Time, Thursday, February 1st. I'm listening to Old Soul tell the horrific story about the pregnant minor. I feel terrible and very sad with this entire situation. How dare Republicans control this minor's health choices? How dare they threaten anyone who helps the minor with medical assistance? I agree that the Republicans and Donald will never win control of the White House. If Old Story doesn't entice people to vote for Joe Biden or against Trump, nothing will. I am from Canada and have listened to all of your podcasts. Thank you. Canadians are watching this election closely. Trump-lefuck's ideology has moved into my country. Like the U.S., there's more and more political division daily in Canada. The world is watching the U.S. election with much interest. We are all confident that Biden and democracy will prevail. I'm proud that Canada gives everyone control of their own health care. I'm proud we have gun laws. We certainly have our problems and continue to try to improve. I hope your abortion laws will be replaced, your health care made more accessible, gun laws be enacted. I love the USA. I spend lots of time there. I think I have visited almost every state. Trump is a world problem. I will continue to listen to your excellent commentary with much interest. Thank you for all you do. Respect, Ted from Canada. Thank you very much, Ted. I appreciate that. And I have a great love for Canada, too. I've been there a number of times, and it's a wonderful country. But as you said, some of this fascist behavior has bled over into Canada. I tell you what I think is going to happen, Ted. This whole MAGA bullshit is going to come tumbling down and tumbling down hard. It's going to be an embarrassment to say you were in the MAGA crew. And I think this whole fascist movement and MAGA in general will fade away out of embarrassment when this is all said and done. And when that happens in the US, you will see the people up in Canada heading back under the rocks where they were at one point. They were always there, but they came out from under the rocks because Donald Trump made it okay. When Donald Trump is done away with and either in jail or in a hole someplace, this will all start to, it won't happen immediately. It's going to take some time to eradicate these fucks, but eventually they will come to realize that they have no more power. They have no more Lord and Savior to lead them, and they will head back under their rocks. All right, the next email. Hi, Boomer. Another great show with soul, and as always, next level insight and a few laughs. Trump owe me money too. Busted me pretty good. We also met another young woman, actually a girl in this case, in deep trauma through no fault of her own, and behind her thousands more. It's eye-opening and maddening to say the least. On a couple of topics, if I may. I'm with Soul Remitch. I actually respected him more when he was stealing the Supreme Court seats. He owes this country bigly for being largely responsible for where we are right now. I keep thinking and hoping he recognizes that and uses his considerable skills to plot a Machiavellian ending to Trump. On the immigration bill, I predict that it never hits the floor in the House. That's Trump's last stand politically, and I don't think Mike Johnson has enough Johnson in his Johnson to defy him on this one. Sol had a great point on the strategic benefits of them acting on it, but that doesn't matter to Trump or his supporters. They just want to scream about it, and they left cognitive dissonance in their rearview mirror a long time ago. One of the earlier emailers talked about the border and why this is a big problem. It's not a big problem. It's no bigger problem than it was under Donald Trump or Barack Obama or George W. Bush. It's a talking point for the Republicans. They have to find something to try to discount or discredit Joe Biden. And that happened to be one of the things they start talking about. They talk about how it's wide open and there's a crisis at the border. And I'm sure we have a lot of people coming across the border, and it's a problem. It's always been a problem, but it's not the big a problem as they make it out to be. So what they do is Republicans do what they always do, and they use their scare tactics. And in using the scare tactics, people get whipped up. And this is why I'm constantly hearing from people, oh, you just want the border open. These people are coming across the border. Well, I tell you what, there's a lot of people in states on the southern border that have a lot of jobs they need to be filled. And because of the behavior of DeSantis and Greg Abbott, those jobs aren't filled because they counted on immigrants to fill those jobs. At one point, will the businesses in those states kick back? If they can't do business, they can't make money, and then they're out of business. But, it's more important to Greg Abbott and DeSantis that these people happen to be brown than anything else. The emailer goes on and says, here to Sol's observation, the legal gears moving too slowly. Frankly, it's discouraging me a bit, Boomer, and I predict that SCOTUS will take up the immunity case just to be part of the drama and eat up more time. All right. Based on the above, I'm going to call Mitch's office today and remind him that Mitch was in the Senate when little Mikey Johnson was in the family room drinking a crushed grape. Big gulp, intently watching the facts of life. Please tell Mitch, don't go out like a pussy ass bitch, Mitch. Best, Garage Door Jeff. P.S. As always, I can't confirm, but I heard that if Mike Johnson sees Blair Warner on TV, it causes the naughty thoughts alarm that his adopted son carries for him to start flashing and beeping. Just saying. You won't get that reference. Boom, but the guys right after us, baby boomers, will. I get it. Facts of life. Blair? She was kind of hot. Blair Warner was hot. What do you mean I don't get that? Of course I fucking get it. All right. Thank you, Garage Door Jeff. I appreciate it as always. Another email. Hi, dude. Just finished listening to your latest podcast with Old Soul. Whenever she is a guest, I try to listen in. Dude, you should be listening every show. Yeah, they're special when Old Soul's here, but they ain't bad when she's not here either. She always has some great insight. Got a question for you. Does Old Soul have a GoFundMe or other donation source where we can help her defray her cost of housing, helping out women fleeing their home states, seeking medical services? If so, please send a link. Thanks, Brett, fellow progressive boomer next door in Wisconsin. No, Old Soul doesn't have a GoFundMe. I'm not saying that she won't ever do that, but Old Soul has a good job, and she's a caring person, and she doesn't have a problem taking care of these people. I heard something about, or she told me a story off the air that somebody in Ohio contacted her about giving a talk about getting out to vote and going out to Ohio. And I said, are they paying for you to fly out there? She said, no, I'd rather pay for it myself just to, keep everything clean. I'm going to fly out there. And I said, Old Soul, you're not on social media. How how did they know who you were? And she said, well, I've been on a couple of their videos answering some questions or making comments and that sort of stuff. And the guy who was doing the podcast, I think, reached out to him. And she said that he commented to her that um, she had seen him or seen her on some show with an old guy. I tell you what, old soul, there's going to be a lot of people coming up to you and looking to rent your voice or borrow your voice because it's very strong, it's very compelling, and it's compassionate and it's impactful. So, anyway, no, she doesn't have a GoFundMe. I talked to her about it. I don't know that she wants to do that. I really don't, but I'll talk to her some more about it. Um, she's a very proud woman and she's very capable and she likes helping out. She likes to help out, but I'll talk to her about it. All right. This is a short one coming from Joyce. She says Trump's DC trial has been dropped from the March calendar, Joyce, which is true. And I'm sure a lot of people are losing their shit over it. The trial was scheduled to start on March 4th, of course. Um, but we're still waiting for the decision from the Appellate Court um, with regards to Donald Trump's claim that he has absolute immunity. Once that decision comes down, it'll go to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court probably won't hear it, and then we'll be back on track again. So theoretically, if they're off the March calendar, it could very well be in April, which is fine. It's going to be a 2-month case. That puts us in June or July, still ahead of the election. So I wouldn't get too excited about it. I heard some legal analysts talking about why it's taking so long for the appellate court to come back with a decision on immunity because it's such a ridiculous, frivolous concept. It shouldn't be a problem. It should be a no-brainer. And what these experts were suggesting was that it's probably that the judges are trying to make this decision bulletproof so that, in fact, the Supreme Court just says, yeah, we don't want to hear it. It's pretty well settled in the appellate court. And what he suggested was that there's um, three judges, and they want to make sure it's a unanimous decision by all three judges. I don't know if that's telling me that there's one judge that's not sure about it, because if they aren't, something's fucking wrong. It's an easy case. It's an easy decision. We'll see what happens. And the thing about it is that I wouldn't get too worried about it. It's going to be fine. Now, former President Donald Trump's March 4th trial date um, looks to be pushed back a little bit. Still on appeal with the immunity claim. The change did not appear on the official criminal case docket before U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan, who has made clear since Trump filed his appeal on December 7th that all trial deadlines would be suspended while he challenges the case. Now, on appeal, Trump is arguing that the government does not have authority under the Constitution to bring charges against him for actions he took while he was president after the 2020 election through January 6th. A delay in the DC case makes it increasingly likely that the first of Trump's 4 criminal trials could be held in the spring, would be Manhattan, the New York State charges on business fraud, and in connection with the hush money payments during the 2016 election. Now, that trial was nominally set for March 25th, but the court in that case has signaled deference to Trump's federal election subversion case. New York Supreme Court Justice Juan Marchand has scheduled a pretrial hearing in 2 weeks, February 15th, and is expected to decide after that if trial will go forward as planned. So what could happen is if, in fact, the election interference case in D.C. doesn't happen in March, theoretically, the Manhattan District trial could start in March. Tentatively set for March 25th, but they could even move it up a bit, given that there's an open space, a window where they could start the trial. So Donald Trump's not getting off anything. He may be able to accomplish delaying a month on the election interference case, but but the Manhattan case may fill in the dead spot, as it were. And so, it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. None of it is good news for Donald Trump. All he is doing is delaying the inevitable. I hope the appellate court is just trying to set this up so the Supreme Court doesn't even bother with it. That would be what I would think would happen with regards to the immunity case. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's no one's going to say he has immunity. That would be crazy, and it would create a bunch of chaos, given that that would make Joe Biden immune as well. Now, we've been talking about the Letitia James lawsuit in New York and Judge Engoron. They wrapped up the case, on January 11th. He said that he was hoping to be able to come up with a final decision on the amount of money that Donald Trump is going to have to pay by January 31st, by the end of January. Here we sit on February 2nd, and he hasn't done that as yet. And it sounds like there's going to be a bit of a delay there. But that may not be bad news. There may be a reason for that. So Judge Engoron is expected to issue an early to mid-February ruling in the $370 million civil fraud case brought against former President Trump by the Attorney General's office, Letitia James. Now, Judge Engoron previously had said he would aim to issue a decision by the end of January, but emphasized that a deadline was not firm. The new February deadline is a rough estimate and is subject to modifications, according to the court's spokesperson. New York Attorney General Letitia James sued Trump in 2022, claiming he falsely altered his net worth on key financial statements to receive tax and insurance benefits. The documents detailed the value of the Trump's organization's various assets. Now, the state says those transactions were evidence of fraud, while Trump has maintained that there was no fraud and the banks who received the documents did their own due diligence. But as you know, the liability of the fraud has already been decided. Donald Trump is already guilty of the fraud by way of the court. Now it's just a matter of trying to figure out how much he owes. And when that number comes out, that will be the death knell to Donald Trump financially and maybe personally. It's going to be too much. He's going to have to start liquidating shit, and he's going to be bled dry. Now, as I said, the fraud trial ended in January after 2 months of testimony, 40 witnesses, including Michael Cohen. Before the trial began, Engoron found Trump, the Trump Organization, and several top executives, including his sons, liable for fraud. Trump and the judge have had contentious relationship throughout the trial. Now, in addition to the $370 million financial penalty, James has asked Engoron to ban Trump from New York's real estate business for life. The judge could issue his decision anytime. They said early February to mid-February. Well, here we sit on February 2nd, and this is early February. So it could come at any time. It could come today, for that matter. I have a feeling that if they announce it, it's going to come on a Friday. Maybe not this Friday, maybe not today, but on a Friday, because they're almost certain to be a lot of pushing back by Donald Trump and his followers. And it might be best to release it late on a Friday, so you got the weekend, everybody goes home, and there's a cooling off period. Now, I don't know if that's going to happen. That's just the way I would do it, given if there's any concerns about whether I won't say there's going to be violence. There's not going to be violence. Donald Trump can't put that together, but there's going to be a lot of noise. There's going to be a lot of threats. I can almost guarantee you of that. Donald Trump is a narcissist, and when he gets pushed in a corner with no way out, that's when the shit starts to fly. That's when he's the most dangerous. So I'm sure Judge Engoron is aware of this and thinking about it. But people are probably saying to themselves, well, why did he delay it? This should be an easy one. Why would he delay it? Oh, Donald Trump's just getting away with this being delayed. And honestly, I don't think that's the problem. I think the delay is more bad news for Donald Trump than it is um, for Letitia James. And here's why. I was watching Midas Touch, and Midas Touch brought up an interesting point, and it makes a lot of sense. Basically, Donald Trump's company is in a receivership, and they have a one person kind of running everything and watching over everything with Donald Trump's businesses. Her name's Barbara. I don't recall her last name, but she's very smart and very well respected. And she was compiling a report for the last year or so, and she turned that report in just like yesterday or the day before. And in that report, we know we've heard at least one bad bit of information how Donald Trump claimed to have a $50 million loan that he gave to another part of his company, but there's no record of the actual money or anything. It sounds like an attempt to skirt taxes or to evade taxes. So what I'm thinking here is that Judge Engeron may have been ready to give his judgment, but when that report came in and he saw all this other shit, he maybe needed to think about it a little bit and why this would be bad for Donald Trump if it got worse by way of that report on Donald Trump's behavior and moving of money since the receivership was in place. That may add on to that 370. I think it's going to be higher than 370 anyway. But whatever Donald Trump had been doing and whatever is in that report might very well reflect in the final decision and the final amount that Donald Trump will have to pay. We'll see what happens. We're talking early February, mid February. It's February 2nd, so it's at most 12 days. So relax. This isn't good news for Donald Trump. I know you're anxious, but it's going to get done. And when it does, Donald Trump will be so fucked. He will have no money, no room to move, and he'll be freaking the fuck out. All right. We are going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. All right. We were talking about this imminent delay of the election interference case in D.C. And I mentioned this opens up an opportunity for the Manhattan District to slip in there, Alvin Bragg, and start their case, which is involving fraud and Stormy Daniels and all kinds of shit. We often forget about that case, but those are felony charges. And as I've told you before, we only need one or two felony charges and Donald Trump is fucking done. Wouldn't it be ironic that with all the other stuff waiting in the wings, that the Manhattan District, the first people to indict Donald Trump, are the ones to get the first conviction, and that takes Donald Trump down? Then it'll just be like kicking a dead horse after that with Donald Trump because he won't be able to move. And it won't matter when it shows up or if there's a delay or anything like that. So, but there's more to that story with the Manhattan District, some good news. Devastating news to Donald Trump, but good news for Alvin Bragg in the Manhattan District and all of us. You see, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg just got a huge gift with the potential perjury guilty plea of former Trump Organization chief accountant Alan Weisselberg. That's right, Alan Weisselberg is pleading out for perjury. What that means was in the case where they convicted Donald Trump's organization and Alan Weisselberg testified only about the organization, not Donald Trump, apparently he lied. And Alvin Bragg knows he lied. And he said, Alan, come here, you old fuck. You want to go back to Rikers or do you want to testify? Because you're a perjury given motherfucker. And so Alan Weisselberg is probably thinking about, yeah, Rikers wasn't great. That wasn't Club Fed. That was not a good experience. So yeah, I'll talk. And as I've told you before, inevitably, Weisselberg will talk. I've been surprised. He's been pretty stout when it comes to not testifying against Donald Trump. But now we're getting down to nut cutting time, and he's like 100. He'll die in prison if he doesn't testify. So here we go. Now, Bragg is prosecuting a criminal business fraud case against the former president, stemming from his alleged concealment of hush money payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels. Now, Katie Fang on MSNBC was talking about this. She said, "Your reaction to this news," asked Katie Fang, herself an attorney. "I guess timing is everything, right? We're waiting for Judge Engoron to issue his ruling on the remaining counts that were under trial for the last few weeks. Do you think that's why we haven't received anything yet from Judge Engoron?" And legal analyst Mariotti said, "That's a great question. I think he's probably taking his time on that opinion because it's an important one. It's very consequential." He said, "Really, I think regarding this news, what I would say is that you have to know that Alan Weisselberg is giving Alvin Bragg and his team a heck of a lot. Realistically, a prosecutor putting a witness up for the prosecution who's pleading guilty to perjury, that's not going to be a very attractive witness." The between the lines takeaway, Mariotti reminded Fang, is that in order for that witness to be worth the time, they've got to be giving up something really important. That's what I think is really the news here. So we are all sleeping on the Manhattan District, and that may be the one. And Alan Weisselberg is ready to motherfucking talk. So it's all going to be interesting. I know every time I get people DMing me all the time, "Oh my God, this happened. I'm worried. Talk me out of it." You have to be patient. You have to trust. You have to have some faith. We're on the right track. There really is no way out for Donald Trump when it comes to the legal issues or anything like that. You're not going to get away from this. So let it play out the way it's going to play out. Just be patient. Don't get scared. Don't get whiny and cry. It's going to happen. It may not happen as quickly as you want, but too fucking bad. That's the way life is. I have to tell my granddaughter that sometimes. You want that, but you can't have that. Unfortunately, honey, that's the way life is. You just deal with it and move on. And that's what we must do with this. Donald Trump is just weeks or months away, well, days away from being destroyed financially. I mean, literally destroyed. And beyond that, the crimes will come, the convictions will come, and he'll be destroyed completely. It's all going to happen. If it happens tomorrow, a week from now, 2 months, who cares? As long as it happens. All right, well, let's talk about the border issue. One of the emailers brought it up. And right now, Senate Republicans are in a little distress over whether to support a plan to fix the migrant crisis at the U.S. Mexico border that includes key concessions that they had demanded from Democrats months ago in exchange for approving new U.S. aid to Ukraine. So the Republicans and the Democrats in the Senate put together a bipartisan bill, gave the Republicans what they wanted, and now they don't want it. It's what I've told you before. It isn't about anything regarding the border. It's about owning Donald Trump. They have one talking point, not Donald Trump, Joe Biden. They have one talking point that they can call Joe Biden out on, and that's the border, even though it's mostly bullshit. But that's the one thing they had. But Joe Biden, being a smart motherfucker, put together with the Democrats this bill, gave them what they wanted, got what Joe wanted for Ukraine, and now they're doing a little two-step because, as I told you before, even if Joe gave them everything they wanted, they will still try to turn it down because it isn't about the border. It's about making Joe Biden look good. And Joe Biden set a trap for them, and they fell right in it. They are in a no-win situation. If they accept the bill, Joe Biden gets some wins out of that. If they don't accept the bill, they're going to be blamed for the border after all this bitching about the border. They're at a catch-22 for you old folks. You'll understand that reference. The bipartisan legislation is expected to be unveiled as early as today, giving senators time to review the text before a planned procedural vote next week. But with former President Donald Trump, House Speaker Mike Johnson, and much of the right whipping opposition to the bill before it's even been unveiled, its future in the Senate appears to be in serious jeopardy. We'll see about that. I don't know that they cannot pass this bill. It's much like what I said with the spending bills and such and closing the country down. They're damned if they do and damned if they don't, and they're worse off if they don't. So I have a feeling somehow, some way this will get figured out and they will pass this bill. I just get that sense about it. But yeah, I could be wrong. Just ask my wife. I was wrong 100 times today, I'm sure. There's a lot of really good conservative border policy that it's become a target. Senate Minority Whip John Thune of South Dakota acknowledged on Thursday, if the bill is strong enough and good enough, and we have a strong number of Republicans who are interested in supporting it, then we will see where it goes from there. I don't think it's going to have as much problem in the Senate. It's the House we've got to worry about, frankly. Although it depends on how many people are still carrying water for Donald Trump. You would think they'd stop that shit. They're losing every time they turn around. Republicans have for years called on President Joe Biden to address the crisis on the border, insisting that the elevated flow of migrants is an urgent national security threat and calling for legislation to address it. But with an agreement in sight after 4 months of negotiations, many in the GOP now say that Congress doesn't need to pass new legislation and that Biden ought to simply take executive action to fix it. Some have openly admitted they don't want to give Biden a victory ahead of the November presidential election by letting him take off the table an issue on which he rates poorly among the electorate. And the only reason he rates poorly is because of the mouths of the Republicans. They're spewing lies and bullshit, and a certain faction of people buy into it. This is what the Republicans do. This is what they've always done. So John Cornyn said, Senator John Cornyn from Texas, it's proven to be a political liability for President Biden, so they want to try to act like they're doing something about it for a fig leaf, Cornyn said, who is undecided on the bill. And what he's basically saying is we don't want to give them a win. Well, you're so worried about the border. You got what you wanted on the border, and you don't want to vote for it. Then you decide, well, he should just shut down the border. And then Joe Biden says, well, if you sign this bill, I'll shut down the border the first day. See what I mean? They're caught in a bad position. They look stupid either way they go on this thing. Now, the deal would reportedly require the U.S. to close the border if a 7-day average of illegal crossing reaches or climbs past 5,000 encounters. It would also speed up the asylum process, which has long suffered from a lack of resources and an overwhelmed immigration court system. See, that's the thing. This would do some good. This would help. And that's not good for the Republicans because now they can't complain about the border. They keep trying to get Joe Biden on some under the table money with Hunter Biden. They have no evidence. They want to try to impeach him, but again, no evidence. So this is the one thing they can fight against Joe Biden with, but they're close to losing that if this bill gets passed. Now, and they're all complaining about it before they even read the motherfucking thing. That tells you where their mindset is. Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska called out opponents of the bill for rejecting proposals to toughen border enforcement that her party had insisted on from the beginning, though few in the GOP seem to be listening. Yeah, she doesn't have a lot of power. She's always been kind of in the middle. She said it was the Republicans, I'll remind you, that told the Democrats months ago that if you want to try to get your Ukraine funding, you're going to have to take up the border issue, Murkowski said. This is what we asked for. Let's take up what we asked for. And that's absolutely right. They really don't want to help Ukraine. Apparently, they don't have the foresight to understand the potential dangers of letting Vladimir Putin and the Russians run roughshod over Ukraine and then whichever NATO country they want to run over next time. The growing opposition within the GOP has frustrated James Lankford, Senate Republican in Oklahoma, who has for months been engaged in the talks to craft the measure alongside Senators Chris Murphy and Kristen Sinema. Now, Lankford, who is well liked on both sides of the aisle, said he had conversations individually with each GOP senator and leadership in the House in an attempt to correct misinformation and internet rumors about its provisions. That's what I mean. Everybody's talking shit. Nobody knows anything, and they're all ready to sink this motherfucker without knowing anything. And they can do that because it doesn't matter what's in it. They feel it's a negative to them in the upcoming election, and they're right if they give Joe Biden the win. But again, Joe Biden's a wily motherfucker. He put them in this position, and that's why it's a good thing that we have Joe Biden in office now. Even if he is old, he is very experienced and he's very savvy. And just like the spending bills, Joe Biden took him to the woodshed. Now, Trump allies have alleged all sorts of things without viewing the bill, including that it provides amnesty to undocumented immigrants, a dirty word on the right. Now, there's been no indication that there's anything like that in the bill, but again, they just make shit up. They say it and try to get people to believe it. And unfortunately, there are some stupid people in this country that will believe anything. I sometimes think to myself that I should make up some conspiracy theory and see if I can sell that amongst the Trumple fucks. I've said before, if I was a greedy fuck and I didn't care, there's probably a lot of money to be made in merchandise and shit like that that is positive Trump to sell them. I would feel dirty by selling that kind of stuff, but I would take great joy in taking money off of them. It's a quandary, and thankfully, I'm too lazy to venture into that sort of thing. Now, there's an interesting story that came out yesterday. And I don't know how to feel about it, if I'm mad about it or I'm excited about it, but it's a story nonetheless. Special counsel Jack Smith's team probed an astonishing lapse that saw FBI agents miss a hidden room in their search of Mar-a-Lago. And allegedly, there is some other documents in that locked closet or room or whatever. Why the FBI didn't go in there, why they didn't insist that it be unlocked so they could look at it, I don't know what was going on there or how that happened. But that's the talk now. Multiple witnesses were questioned about a secret space off the former president's bedroom hidden behind a large dresser and a big television set that FBI agents did not check when they searched Trump's Florida state in August of 2022. Now, former Justice Department security official Jordan Strauss called the alleged lapse a bit astonishing. Yeah, I would say so. You're searching a former president's house, Strauss told ABC News. You get it right the first time. Yeah, you better get it right the first time. And did you really think that Donald Trump would be forthcoming and tell you about this secret room? You should be taking down walls and kicking in doors if you have to find this shit because he is a slimy motherfucker. Now, FBI agents seized more than 100 classified documents found in the Mar-a-Lago ballroom, bathroom, shower, bedroom, and office space, court records show. But sources told ABC News that investigators now wish they'd checked a locked closet and the hidden room, as it remains unclear if Trump stored classified documents in either space. Maintenance workers sometimes went into the hidden room to access cables, sources reported. Now, the FBI didn't even know the so called hidden room existed until after they left Mar a Lago. So it's interesting what's in there. Well, it's a hidden secret room. What kind of shit do you think might be in there? Maybe videotapes, maybe documents, maybe anything. They didn't hide the fucking room to put exercise equipment in there. I'm pretty sure that's not what's in there. So the question is, what do you do now? Do you go back and search again? Because you wouldn't be able to just search that room. You'd have to search everything. Presumably, now that it's all known that there's a secret room, they're going to move it again. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The FBI should have gotten this right the fucking first time, and they didn't. So there still may be classified documents sitting in this room, putting this country at danger. I'm curious as to see what they're going to do to rectify this situation. It's not like, well, we missed it, too bad. Classified documents, potentially in the possession of a 91 time charged felon. That's not a good thing. That's concerning, to say the least. Now, here's a story I like. Makes me like Joe Biden even better now that I read this story. Apparently, Joe Biden privately speaks of former President Donald Trump in sometimes vulgar terms. Oh, imagine that. That's something me and Biden have in common. Politico noted that during a speech last month in Pennsylvania, Biden recalled Trump getting chuckles from a crowd when talking about Paul Pelosi, who was attacked by an intruder with a hammer. Biden told the crowd before stopping himself, "What a sick," and he didn't say the rest. That was in public. That was in front of a crowd. Discretion, the better part of valor. Even Joe Biden knows that. Privately, however, the president completes such thoughts. The president has described Trump to a longtime friend and close aide as a sick fuck who delights in others' misfortunes, according to three people who have heard the president use the profane description. Right there, even if he was a horrible president, I'm voting for Joe Biden because he recognizes and articulates the fact that Donald Trump is a sick fuck. And he's absolutely spot on with that. Now, according to one of the people who has spoken with the president, Biden recently said of Trump, "What a fucking asshole this guy is." God, I would like to get the audio of Joe Biden saying that Donald Trump is an asshole. That would be awesome. When reached for comment by Politico, the Trump campaign was indignant. Yeah, I bet they were indignant. "It's a shame that Crooked Joe disrespects the presidency both publicly and privately." Campaign advisor Chris LaCivita told the publication. But then again, it's no surprise he disrespects the 45th president the same way he disrespects the American people with his failed policies. I don't know. The economy looks good. Jobs are good. I don't, we've got infrastructure. We got the CHIPS Act. I don't know what's going wrong. They keep saying the horrible policies. I see nothing but effective and successful policies, but that's Republicans for you. And the audacity of suggesting that Joe Biden's disrespectful. Who's more disrespectful than Donald Trump? Not only to Joe Biden, but to judges, to lawyers, to juries, to the general public. That is the most disrespectful sick fuck I've ever seen. So you can whine and cry about it all you want, but fuck you, Donald Trump, and anybody that stands by him. The 2024 campaign will likely prove to be just as contentious, if not more so, than when Biden and Trump showed down in 2020, which Trump falsely claims was rigged, of course. Disrespectful of democracy, disrespectful of the process of the election, disrespectful of Congress. Yeah, Donald Trump knows about disrespect because, as I say, the most disrespectful fuck there is. It's now they keep setting this up as Biden will be up against Trump in the 2024 election. And I still honestly believe that he will not be the nominee. Again, I could be wrong. And honestly, if I am wrong, I would be happier because I would love to see Donald Trump get destroyed. And I know if he is the nominee, he will get destroyed. He will get buried. It will be a landslide. And then see what Donald Trump does. By then, the Republicans will be tired of his shit, finally realize that he's a loser and of no value to them, and they will leave him by the side of the road. No question. Now, we've been hearing about how Republicans want the border taken care of, but now they've got a bill and now they don't want to take care of the border. In fact, Donald Trump has said, leave it wide open, blame it on me. He's trying to tell us 300,000 people a year get killed from immigrants coming across the border, which is absolutely ridiculous. And he's kind of all for that coming across the border because if they kill 300,000 people, he's presuming it will help his election. That's how despicable that motherfucker is. So in the process, they're trying to impeach Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. And that's not been going well. It's not really been going well because, once again, they don't have evidence. They're trying to tell us that he did nothing about the border while they're doing nothing about the border. That's ironic. Now, after describing himself as a lean no on the matter, Ken Buck from Colorado, who's retiring, he appeared on Thursday's Chris Jansing Reports on MSNBC and said he opposes the measure. House Republicans are seeking to impeach Mayorkas over his handling of the southern border. Only one cabinet secretary has been so sanctioned, and that was in 1876. A new potentially fatal blow to the House Republicans' efforts to impeach Alejandro Mayorkas comes with Ken Buck saying, fuck no, I'm not doing it. And they got a thin majority there, remember. So they can't afford to lose any Republicans not voting to impeach this guy. Ken Buck went on to say, well, this is not a high crime or misdemeanor, referring to the grounds for impeachment outlined in the Constitution. It's not an impeachable offense. This is a policy difference. Let me from the outset say there is a crisis on the border. The law needs to be enforced. But if we start going down this path of impeachment with cabinet officials, we are opening the door as Republicans that we don't want to open. The next president, who is a Republican, will face the same scrutiny from Democrats. It's wrong, and we should not set this precedent. He's absolutely right. And this is the one way that Republicans always fail. They do all these little games that they play with presidents in the White House and the Supreme Court. But what they fail to understand is if they set that precedent that it's okay to do that, then you can count on the Democrats doing the same to them, and then they'll scream like a fucking stuck pig. But they don't think about that. Ken Buck does think about it, and unfortunately for the Republicans, he's retiring. Jansen noted that Buck had just told NBC News he is a solid no and asked if he could change his mind. He was asked, have leaders been trying to convince you otherwise? Jansing asked. And is there anything that will change your mind? Or when you say solid no, you mean solid no? He said, yeah, I'm not changing my mind. I believe I've done my due diligence and I'm standing firm at this point on this. If there's some new evidence, I'm happy to look at it, but I don't believe there will be. So the Republicans are setting themselves up to fail and look stupid again. Oh, big fucking surprise. Big surprise. So we'll see what happens with it. I don't know that they'll actually be able to impeach Mayorkas, but if they do, they're setting themselves up for a lot of pain should they ever have a Republican president, because they'll take his cabinet members out and they'll fucking get rid of them because they'll no doubt be bad simply by virtue of them being Republicans. All right, we're coming to the end here, but New York Times correspondent Maggie Habermeyer had bad news for former President Donald Trump regarding the $83 million judgment he owes E. Jean Carroll. And that bad news is his donors can't pay it for him. I get this a lot. People will say, well, his donors will just give him the $83 million. Well, he doesn't have time. He doesn't have time to grift that. He's got 30 days um, to appeal this thing. And in order to appeal it, he needs the money up front and put away in escrow or something before he can appeal it. He's already 1 week into the 30 days. And even if he did try to grift it from his donors, it's going to take a lot longer than 3 weeks to get 83 million out of those dumb fucks. If he can even do it, and I don't think he can. Haberman and Shane Goldmacher reported Tuesday that Trump donors funded the Trump's legal cases to the tune of about $50 million in 2023 through PAC donations. So he got 50 million bucks over a period of a year, and he's got 30 days, or actually 21 days now. Now, Caitlin Collins asked Haberman if that same method could be used to pay Carroll's judgment or the coming fraud trial penalty. Alas, Haberman says the money will have to come from him. Here's how the conversation went. Caitlin Collins, is he paying? We were talking about this last night with Eugene Carroll and whether or not that could come out of the super PAC. Do we know what he is personally paying for at this point, if anything? Haberman says, so a couple of things. It can't come out of the super PAC legally. He can't. That would be coordination that the Political Action Committee, which is what Save America is. As I expect it will show in the report, we don't know for sure, but just based on the math that I know is there, unless they had a flood of donations, it would be only cover a fraction. And campaign finance experts are split on whether he could use that anyway. So yes, it will have to be from him, and he and his company are fairly indistinguishable. He did have to put the money up in the first Eugene Carroll trial. It was $5 million. This is a lot more than $5 million. So like I said, he put that money up himself. He didn't get a bond. He didn't get anybody to extend him credit. He put the $5 million himself. Now, if he's in the same situation, coming up with 83 million, it's going to be a problem. So he's appealed that first case for $5 million, but in order to appeal it, he had to put that money up in some kind of escrow type of thing. So they made sure it was there when he lost. But they had to keep it from Eugene Carroll while the appeal process was going on. Same thing is going to happen with this second trial, except it's $83.3 million, and that poses some problems because he don't have it. Somebody like Donald Trump can come up with a $5 million one way or another. But when you start asking people for 83 million, they get a little funny. Collins went on and said, and we could be getting the civil suit for and Haberman said, yes, inflating his business soon. Collins said, when I was looking at Alina Habba, when she came out after that $83.3 million verdict on Friday, I think one question is he happy with his legal team at this point? I mean, I know that's a broad term because there's so many of them, but I mean, what have you heard about that? Haberman says, so I think a couple of things. He almost never happy with his legal team at various points. And you know this as well as anybody, especially when people just leave court. There are a couple of members of his legal team, like Todd Blanche, who have not yet been tested in court, and it will be interesting to see how he does. Now, if the Alvin Bragg Manhattan District Attorney hush money case goes forward in March as expected, and he's on that case, I don't know how winnable this case was for anybody, Alina Habba or not. But Trump has certain things that he has to worry about, and whether or not he can even hold on to his lawyers. You know, he was talking about the appeal process and how he was interviewing lawyers. Well, who the fuck wants to work for Donald Trump? He doesn't pay. He's running out of money. He's a horrible client because he dictates what these lawyers should do, and it's always wrong, and it always makes them look bad. He's had dozens of his own lawyers sanctioned or disbarred. Who wants to jump into that fucking mess? I mean, lawyers will jump into high profile cases in order to get publicity. They don't want this kind of publicity. This isn't good publicity. This is going to do them no good. In fact, it's probably going to harm them. He may not have any choice but to go with Alina Habba, and she's an absolute fucking joke. So we'll see what happens. So the bottom line is, I want everybody to be cool and calm. It's all going well. Maybe not as quickly as you want it to, but it's going to be fine. We've gotten this far. Donald Trump has 91 felony charges. Within days, Judge Engoron is going to take every penny away from him. And if you think that isn't devastating, well, just wait and watch. Just watch what happens to Donald Trump when he gets hit with a $400 million verdict coming from Judge Engoron. All right. We are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.